Hello and welcome to another Cloud Podcast, a podcast designed to bring you stories from the smartest minds in IT, operations, and business, and learn how they're using cloud technology to improve business and the customer experience. All right, well, welcome to another Cloud Podcast. We're excited to have Graham Wright from SumUp. He is the head of customer experience over there and is going to enlighten us with a wealth of information and knowledge about his experience with SumUp and just the whole customer experience. Artie, of course, is joining us. Good to have you today, but ultimately, Graham, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Alex. It's good to be here.
And Artie, so it's Friday. We're all geared up. We're ready to go for this podcast, and we're excited because the weekend's coming up. So we're going to keep this nice and loose, talk about your experience and all that good stuff. But Artie, good to see you too, buddy.
Yeah, nice to see you. Thanks so much, Graham, for joining on the podcast. For the people who don't know, because we're in podcast time and land, it's Friday afternoon. So after this, maybe one or two emails, and then I'm going to go outside. I'm going to have a beer. It's nice and warm outside. We're in Southern California here. Yeah, hopefully you guys have some afternoon plans. If not, maybe some plans over the weekends.
Awesome. Yeah, we love Fridays. So Graham, let's get back into it. Let's talk about SumUp, your journey to getting to SumUp, and how your customer experience journey started and where you came from. Everyone's got a little unique story on how they got there.
Yeah. So I cut my teeth in the CX market research world when I lived in San Diego. So I worked for a small market research company called Strategic Vision, and really caught the bug for doing research there. Bounced around after being there for about 7 to 8 years to working at Lenovo for a hot minute. And then I saw this opportunity for a small startup called SumUp in Colorado. So I applied, took the risk, and have been here for about 4.5 months now. And it's fantastic. We're one of Europe's fastest growing companies, and we're growing very rapidly in the US as well. We've had about 4x growth in the last year alone, and that's in the middle of a pandemic. And so it's been great to come here and help them kind of understand the customer experience and understand why their merchants are making the decision to come to SumUp rather than to Square.
Yeah, let's describe for those who don't know who SumUp is and what you guys do. Give a quick little recap of who you could, what you guys are doing in the market and how you're helping your clients.
So SumUp, we make credit card readers for the small and micro merchant out there. Our biggest competitor in the US that most people would realize is Square. So when you go to a small business and you can use your card reader, or your credit card there, usually it's Square, and if not Square, then it's usually SumUp in the US. And so that's just a little background about who we are. We basically are setting out to be the #1 global payment processor out there, so that we can help those small businesses out.
Awesome. And one of the interesting facts is that you guys are based in Berlin, correct? And Berlin, from what I've learned over the last couple of years, is definitely like the tech hub of Europe. Who would have thought that Berlin, after all the history, that it would be like this like Silicon Germany area, right, in Berlin. So how has it been? Because you're one of the first guests that actually has a company that's headquartered in Europe. How is that transition from them expanding into North America and just their view of customer experience, what that looks like, to the American view or your view, or how things are playing out? What are some of the things that kind of stood out in that process?
Yeah, there's definitely some cultural differences there. Like in the US, we have a very here and now kind of mindset. But what's been great is in Europe, we've been doing kind of the same thing. We want to be available for merchants where they need us and when they need us. And so whether that's launching things like chat via WeChat or via Facebook Messenger, we've built a really strong foundation in Europe, and a really, really kick-butt team out there as well. And then bringing it over to the US, we've had some struggles. We've had a lot of things that are just European products that we brought to the US market without really thinking about how it the US is a little bit different of a market than Europe. And so we've definitely had some struggles there. But in the time that I've been here at SumUp, like I said, we've seen rapid growth. I've seen rapid change and really a focus on bringing American products to the American market, and fixing small things like, for example, one of our card readers said VAT on it, which made no sense to Americans, right? We think in taxes, not in VAT. And so we quickly adjusted that and made sure that just updating our labels so that they were correct. And even other small things like changing where the dollar sign is on in the app. So in the US, we put dollar and then the amount, and in Europe, it's the amount and then the euro. And so there's just been some small things that we've been working to change here. But really our European team is fantastic, and it's been great for me. I work very closely with my European counterpart. He's got 3 years on me at this company, and just a wealth of knowledge that he brings. And he also kind of helps me understand how we can bridge the gap in like me thinking very American and how that translates to our European developers and our European company as a whole.
Now, do you have to work EU hours? Are you working very, very early, or do you have your own hours? And my follow-up question also is, I know it's still the pandemic for the people who are watching this, that's probably post-pandemic, but it's still a pandemic. Have you had the ability in the last, I think it's 4 months when you started, to go out to HQ and meet everyone in person in Berlin?
Yeah, so I've worked European hours once in the 4 months that I've been here. I've had only one meeting at early in the morning. It was about 4 in the morning. Probably the worst day ever, having a 4 a.m. meeting. But no, right now, so because we have a US operation, we work US hours. We're doing mountain daylight time right now, I guess. So 8 to 5 p.m. And then, but for our customer support team, one of the things that we are working on is extending US hours to support. We're trying to go to 24/7 hour support, but right now we've moved to extend to Eastern startup times. So if you're in New York, instead of having to wait until someone's available at like 10 o'clock your time, we've made agents available at 8 a.m. And we will be rolling out here in the next couple of weeks another hour change, so that we can have more hours for our merchants whenever they need us. Right. So to answer your second question, I haven't had a chance to go out to Europe yet. They are very locked down compared to the US.
Very nice. And we often talk about, Alex and I talk about global deployments and helping people through some of the challenges that come with having customer experience and support centers that span across just more than North America, so EU and also Asia Pacific. One of the things that often comes up is compliance. We know that in Europe, there are different compliance regulations than the US. Some we do share some, but there are some more in EU, and there's also some unique ones here in North America. But how do you guys work through some of those hard compliances? For example, GDPR or privacy related type things, or anything having to do with the UK and Brexit and having to comply with them not being a part of the European Union. Does that come up a lot during your conversations, or does that come up a lot when your customers are reaching out to you?
Yeah, so I guess one of the good things is we operate very independently of each other. And so we are fully GDPR compliant, even though we aren't obviously in Europe. It's very beneficial for like California, for example, who has probably some of the strictest data laws in the US. I would say New York would probably be second place for that. So it's been beneficial that way. But because we operate fairly independently of each other, we don't have to worry too much about GDPR. Occasionally, what will happen is there'll be someone who signs up in the US who is a European citizen, And really what that just amounts to is, hey, okay, we have to close down your US account, and then we'll send you over to Europe and have you set up over there. And then we haven't had too much of an issue when it comes to people emailing our support line because of for example, in the UK, most email addresses end in .uk. And so we're able to filter those out and never even see those messages. But our compliance team here in the US does a really good job to make sure that we stay compliant, and as well as in Europe, making sure that we meet all of the regulations that are there, and make sure that as a company as a whole that we can move forward. And one thing I love is that I don't have to focus on that. We have a great compliance team here, and a great head of compliance who's just recently started as well in January of this year. And so it's been great working with him, kind of saying, hey, here's what we have, let me help you out, and like getting his feedback so that our customer experience agents and our customer experience teams are 100% compliant in everything that we do.
Yeah, compliance is big. It's a big one, and every state being different, every country being different, for sure. Let's go a little bit into that we talked a little bit before about the customer support versus customer experience. How do you separate those two, or view those two, like in your day-to-day and setting up your teams and working through that for SumUp?
Yeah, I think when you really think about customer support versus customer experience, I think they both have the same end goal, right? And the end goal is that you are making your customer happy, right? It's just how you get there. Support to me is a very reactive thing. You're waiting for someone to say, hey, I have an issue, and then notify you of the issue that they have. And then you go and you react and you try and fix their issue for them. Whereas customer experience is really about being proactive and knowing that issues arise before your customer can tell you about it. And now the support world adds into the experience world. We do a lot of surveys to make sure that we're collecting feedback from merchants, our customers, and asking them, for feedback on how we can improve our products, what they love, what they hate, and then really going forward and acting on that, and then kind of closing that loop, creating a feedback loop for them so that they know that we've heard them and that we're responding. And so in the US, we are very proactive in certain areas. Like if you sign up for a SumUp account, you spend your $20, you buy a card reader, and you haven't started transacting yet, we get alerts that go off right away. Like,
yep.
Hey, go notify, call this person and find out why they are not transacting. We do a lot of support as well. So we are reactive. When issues arise, we are there to fix them, but we try and be as proactive. We try and be one step ahead of the merchant.
Yeah, that's such a great point. And we actually were on a podcast earlier today. We recorded another one, and they talked a lot about being able to look into that customer and have those triggers that come up for, hey, they haven't finished their training, or they're not using the platform. Because a lot of, in this sense, it was like a SaaS platform for the healthcare companies. And they would know, there's not a lot of ways you can track the metrics. But one way they could is well, how engaged are they in the platform? And I think that brings up a really good point, in that you need to have those triggers so the customer experience, you're on top of it, you're proactive, you're not just waiting for the cancellation request because nothing ever happened, right? And you're just reacting to, I wonder why they canceled, or something like that. But it's interesting.
Yeah. And that's also I think that's a great point, is it's not just about being proactive with the merchants or the customers that you have, but looking at potential churn customers, right? Are you looking if I have this data that we've got, are you looking like you're going to leave us, or are you just taking a high, for us in the small business world, we get a lot of people who are seasonal businesses. So around Christmas, you'll see them fire back up, and then they do business for 1 or 2 months, and then all of a sudden they're gone. And so we want to make sure that those people aren't just forgetting about us, right? We want to make sure that they haven't churned out. We want to make sure that they're still active customers with us. And sometimes you find out that it's been a hard time for them, right? COVID's been very difficult on the small business. And so we want to make sure we can do whatever we can to support them, and make sure that, throughout, not even just the sign up process and the touch points there, but also once they are active and engaged, making sure that they stay active and engaged.
Now, talking a little bit more about your team that fields questions from your merchants. I think you're one of the first people on our podcast that has a true B2B business model, business to business. And your businesses that you're supporting have transactions from their customers, so they're B2C. Oftentimes you'll see some sort of issue between the customer and in this case, the merchant, which is your customer. Do you get the spillover? Does a customer ever reach out to you and say, hey, I bought this, package
Laughing.
of cupcakes and I never got them and I want a
Never
refund
happens.
or, whatever it is. So how do you manage those conversations?
Yeah, we get a lot. And there are two issues that people or our merchants customers contact us for. One, they see the name SumUp on their account and they have no clue who we are, right? Because they'll say SumUp and then it'll say the business name, and so they have, who's this SumUp, right? I don't remember a SumUp. So we do get a lot of questions about, hey, who the heck are you? And then the other thing is we do deal a lot with just trying to help our merchants understand best business practices. And so one of the things our content team is in the middle of rolling out is how can, we had this help center, we have this blog where it's talking a lot about just SumUp and its products. And one of the things that I wanted to see was how can we take that information and turn it into very small business friendly information? Like, how do I do taxes through SumUp, right? Or how do I decide how much to charge my merchant or my customer? And how do I issue a refund to a customer? And so very rarely does a customer call us asking for a refund. One thing that we always make sure to do is that we're a merchant first company. And so if a merchant's experiencing a chargeback, we'll fight for that merchant, right? If we can prove that it was a valid transaction and that this person's just trying to get something for free, services, goods, whatever, we fight for our merchants. And we always take the merchant first approach at SumUp. And so if you call us and you're a customer of a merchant, I can't do much for you. You gotta go take it up with him. I'm gonna stay on with our merchants. So we really do focus on the B2B, and there's just, I would say maybe 5% spillover into our world from the B2C world.
You mentioned the resources, right? For people to go to learn how to, taxes or whatever questions they might have, which adds a ton of value for your merchants, right? It's like, how do you help them help their customers more with this value? Do you have any sort of, resource library, self-service type of how-tos or, library that your merchants can go to kind of offload a lot of those voice calls that come in or email tickets that come in, things like that, to kind of scale through the self-service?
Coming soon, yeah. It is not live yet, but it's in development. So one of when I think of the US and what we need in the US, we need a lot of self-service. I think it's something like 60% of people say that they would rather have some sort of self-service option.
Oh, wow, yeah.
So we're in the process of developing a video series for just our products and how to use our products. But also we're in the process of building a guide for small businesses. And there's information that's out there. You can go to Small Business Center,
right?
You can go to the Small Business Administration from the federal government, whatever you want, but we don't want our merchants to have to go and try and find the information, right? We want to be a source of information for them. And so that's why we really decided to invest those efforts, those resources internally to developing something that a guide in best practices for our merchants. Because a lot of people who come to SumUp, they come to SumUp generally because this was a side hustle, this was just something they were doing on the side and they're trying to turn this into a business, or they're just getting started in the business world. We do have a few customers who have been doing this who are very established, but generally a lot of people are new. And so they need information and they need education. And if we can provide that in a help center or in a just small business guide, that takes off the workload off our customer support agents who don't have to do general information requests and calls.
Yeah, it all takes time, right? It's like one building block at a time. And, it's one of those things where it's a work in progress for so many things. How is it getting just the buy-in from the executives or, the group back in Berlin? Like, has it been very accepted that, yes, we need to build these things out, and it's just a matter of road mapping all of these things you guys want to do?
Yeah, it's always an issue of like, what do you do first when you are in such a growing company, right? Is how do we grow, and not just US specific, but for Europe, and Europe has its own complications. Each country is a little bit different. And really what was easy to do, it wasn't a hard task because the need was there, right? We all knew the need was there, and the data showed that there was a need there. And so it really was, once we could outline that there was a need, it went very quickly in getting approval. My boss here in the US, I mean, he's got a growth mindset, and he saw the need right away. And so really, once you establish the need, it's really just shuffle resources around and shuffle people's time. And in the US, we're a small team. We're not the world's largest team, and we do our best. And really that means putting in some extra hours. And, if we have to hire new people, but we always go through it with a founder's mentality. We try and do more with less, and really go out and, if we see a need for something, just go and do it, is really what it's come down to.
Absolutely.
I'm going to switch gears a little bit here and talk a little bit about the pandemic and how the pandemic potentially changed your business model, maybe even changed the way that you support your customers. I think my first question around this, and I know you started in the pandemic, so you started probably December or end of year 2020, but your team was either already remote or thinking about working from home. So talk us through, was there a lot of complexity in bringing your agents to work from home? Were they already there? Did you already have the cloud technology in place? Talk us through what that transition was like. And then also to talk us through a little bit about how you started during a pandemic. You didn't go into the office first day. You probably worked from home for the first, couple days or months or until now.
Yeah. I'll start with my experience first, and then we'll jump into the experience of going remote. So when I started, it was started December. So we had some issues getting my laptop to me because it's kind of interesting. We use Apple products here because we're a startup and whatever. And I love Apple products. And so I was living in North Carolina at the time, and because it was December 1st, we just didn't have a lot of lead time, and Apple had just released a brand new MacBook Air and MacBook, and Christmas orders were out the wazoo, and everyone wanted one.
Yeah.
So I was about a week into onboarding, and I still hadn't had my computer yet. And I just said, okay, I'm going to Best Buy. I will submit the receipt, just cancel the Apple order. It's not going to get here anytime soon. Just cancel it. So we canceled that. I went to Best Buy and picked up a MacBook Air. It's in rose gold, AKA pink. Everyone thinks it's funny that this 6 foot tall dude has a pink MacBook Air. But yeah, so what's been interesting is SumUp, because we do a lot of work in Europe, we were already accustomed to doing a lot of like Zoom meetings already. And I would say even during this pandemic, probably the best onboarding experience I've ever had at an organization. The training was top notch, got you up to speed really quickly. And the small snafu, the laptop, but that wasn't on them. That was on Apple not being able to fulfill orders quick enough. So the onboarding experience was good. And I met my team virtually, and we just got into it right away. So my team, when I came on, was already remote. So I didn't have too much of a headache there, but they hadn't been remote for very long. They'd been remote for maybe 1 or 2 months. And our big issue was that our agents didn't have laptops. We had them using desktop computers, like they had a Mac Mini or I believe. And so when I came on, what was happening is agents were taking their MacBook Mini home with them, and usually 2 monitors on top of that. And so I was like, okay, let's start rolling out laptops for them. So we started giving agents laptops because agents would come in maybe once or twice a week. And so they would be coming in MacBook Mini, 2 screens, like whenever they came into the office. And whenever they went home, they had to bring their MacBook Mini and their 2 screens. And so now they all have a MacBook Air. It's so like seamless. And we keep the MacBook Minis at the office. And so just because sometimes it's easier to leave your laptop at home, and sometimes it's easier to just be working on the Mac Mini. So that's been pretty good. One of the things that we did here is we already had the cloud software in place, but we created a dashboard that tracked which agents were available online and what like their state was. So were they in like not ready? Were they ready? Were they working cases, whatever? And we made that shareable across the entire organization. We wanted to make sure that any agent who was working remotely knew who was available and knew if it was okay if they took a break, kind of a thing. And so once we implemented that, things got a lot smoother. We weren't having as many like drops in just agents availability. Call like handle times went down, and then also like average speed of answer went down significantly because people could see it was a very transparent. You could see where people were at and what they were doing. And I think that made a big impact in our support team, just happier employees as well, just like they weren't as stressed.
Yeah, I love the story of having to get a rose gold computer. We just did a podcast, and our last guest was telling us about, I think it was like the beginning of March, pandemic. They just sent all the IT people to Best Buy and just grab every USB headset or Bluetooth headset you can find. And of course they got all the like, Halo, PS3, like, so everyone's working from home with all these really cool headsets. They a slightly different call that I was on yesterday, I had asked them the same question, and they said that because they onboard about 100 different employees, and they kind of cycle through employees pretty rapidly, 100 different ones every single month. He said starting back in March, he felt really sketchy because he rented a van, filled it full of computers, drove it across state line, and he called it the computer drops, where he would literally go to like a school or like a parking lot of like a Safeway, and all the people who work in that region would come to that, come to that parking lot, and he would just be passing out computers to employees and then getting back in the car and go to the next
Creepy.
state. So yeah, super creepy. So, but the challenges that we had to go through to go to this work from home environment is definitely crazy. It's awesome to hear that you guys have the cloud ecosystems in place.
Yeah.
And it made it a lot easier, because there's some people who still have really complex VPNs and desktop as a service, and so things aren't working because people don't have Wi-Fi at home that's good enough to take phone calls. So it's good to hear that you guys had that.
Yeah, that's one thing. It's one thing that's always interesting to me, right? Like, so we use Five9 for our call center software, and they've been pretty good to us. And what's been nice is here where we're at, everyone has pretty high speed internet. But when I was out in North Carolina, I mean, I had people in very rural areas, and they couldn't do anything, right? Even with like an Ethernet adapter, plug in Ethernet, it was so painfully slow that we had to modify what they were doing, right? We went from them being able to take calls and things to being able to just only work cases, because the cases we could take your time letting a case screen load. Whereas here, we're very fortunate. So we've got gigabit basically everywhere. But I think it's one of those things that companies who remain like work from home or remain remote need to invest in, right? Give your employees a little stipend to have better internet services, especially if you're going to require them to be on Zoom calls or work from their houses. And that's just, I mean, that's my own personal gripe against companies sometimes is that they're not always willing to invest back in their employees,
Right.
which it shows in their customer experience too, right? Like a good employee experience, it makes a good customer experience in the end of the day. So if you have happy employees, you usually have happier customers because they're just willing to go the extra mile for your customers. And so here we try our best to make sure every agent has what they need at home. We invested in some nicer headsets here for them, noise canceling, USB-C, plug that sucker in and let it run. Just so that when they were at home, they didn't have the distractions. Because when I came over, there were everyone had a little bit different of a headset. It was kind of that like, just we'll get whatever we can, the cheapest option from Amazon or wherever. And then some people had headsets that they had for like 5 years and they were falling apart. And so really, when we invested in those headsets, I knew that we were going to need a large amount over the next couple of months because we were hiring so many people. So I think I did like an order of like 50. I was just like, just order 50. We'll start distributing them to the people we have now, and then we'll have them on hand for when people come available. And the first thing every agent said was, wow, these are really noise canceling. I can't hear anything anymore outside of like what's in their headset. It was really great. So we made sure we invested back in our employees so that they were willing to stick with us through the hard times and, make sure our merchants could hear and understand them well.
Yeah. One of our very first podcasts was from someone who used to be an agent and a supervisor. And he said, there's really 3 creature comforts, physical creature comforts, and that's the computer itself, which thankfully you got the rose gold one, so you're good to go there. A nice chair, because most of the time we're sitting in these chairs doing these calls as called contact center reps for 8 hours a day, 9 hours a day, and then a good headset. So it's really those 3 things. If you can nail those, if you get like the best of the best of those 3 things, people are going to be happier, less churn. They're going to be, the employee experience is going to be, it's going to be much higher. Alex, I'll toss it over to you. You have something to say.
I was going to talk a little bit about the tech stack, right? And just really like, where do you see it going, right? We know like what Five9 and the other cloud providers can provide as far as like services in the contact center, but with AI and predictive engagement and, these upper levels of feature sets that you see coming down the pipe for a lot of these carriers, like what do you see I guess at SumUp, like the vision, the 5 years down the road, like where do you see that evolving for you guys using technology?
Yeah, we always, and I think it's been my own personal approach, I talked with my counterparts in Europe, and our approach has always been to create the best experience for our merchants, right? And that generally means right now a blend of both human and technology. So right now we are setting up chatbots to help with our merchant engagement. Just because one, we don't always have an agent available, and 2, it helps just stagger those chats just a little bit longer. And when you blend the technologies together, you get a really good result. I don't know how AI will look in 5 years. The world has changed so much in the last 5 years, and just to think another 5 years from now, it'll be even more advanced, hopefully. But I think you'll always need a human element to it. And so you need to be able to have people who are emotionally intelligent, who are empathetic, and who are tech savvy enough that they know what the heck's going on the back end, so that it's a seamless experience for people. And really it's about creating invisible experiences. So with our chatbots, we don't want you to feel like you're talking to a chatbot. We want it to feel as seamless as possible. And we really do a hybrid approach of tech meets human. And so as we get more advanced, I think we'll have maybe less human on the basics, but really more human on the specializations where the tech just can't reach yet. So it's always an interesting balance, because you don't want to go all robots. Robots are great and all, but they don't feel anything. So
you don't want the rise of the machines, right?
We don't want rise of the machine. No, I don't have enough.
Especially in the payment processing world, you don't want them controlling all of our money either.
Yeah, in the payment processing world, it's very interesting, right? Like you have things like the rise of new currencies. You've got things like Bitcoin, you've got things like peer-to-peer payments, which is always, it's a small struggle for us, right? The rise of peer-to-peer, and not just in like, hey, Artie, I'm going to send you $20, but like,
Right.
hey, Artie, you now have your own small business and you can use Venmo Business, and I can do peer to business, right? Like it's an ever evolving challenge that we have. And so for us, right, like we try and automate as much of the experience as possible, right? We don't want a human deciding whether or not you're going to get paid out. But when the tech fails, we want to make sure that a human can come in and make sure a payment does go through. And so it's been an interesting battle, and then interesting to see how, as tech evolves, do we need card readers anymore? Can like tap to phone become a thing, or can we help peer-to-peer happen within the business community?
Yeah, and if you think about it, you are the lifeblood of the small business merchant. If it goes down for a day, think about all the transactions that could be lost either to another, just PayPal me or just whatever, like all these other ability to collect payments. So it's got to be, from a support standpoint, it's got to be hard to think about automation and self-service. But then also make sure that you're not doing it too much so that you're alienating your customers, and your customers are like, forget it, I'm just gonna use a competitor, or use some sort of other payment processing system.
Yeah, I think the like with what we do, with what Square does, PayPal, whatever partner you want to think about, like the know your customer KYC, KYB stuff that we're doing is, it's very interesting, right? Because you have to get information on people, and you have to make risk decisions, and sometimes those decisions are not as smooth as we want them to be, and sometimes we have errors in our systems. And like, I mean, for example, last week we had a system outage, and it had nothing to do with our technology at all. It had something to do with our acquirer. And so when we were down for almost 2 days, where merchants were able to take transactions, which was great. Like they were still able to run service. They just weren't able to get paid out. And it was that the API and the system weren't communicating and sending files to each other. So we had almost $1 million worth of payouts that needed to happen that got stuck for 2 days. And so, I mean, we went all in, everyone on the US team, everyone on the Europe team, trying to figure this out, to make sure that our merchants get paid. Because like you said, we are their lifeblood, right? If we have to hold funds for whatever reason, it hurts their business. And so one of the things that we're actively working to develop here in the US is next day, like T+1 payout rather than T+2, which is what we're at right now. So if we can get to the point where you can instant cash out, that can be huge for the small and micro merchant who needs those funds to run their business.
Yeah. Or the other way around, maybe they don't need the funds and they'd rather keep it in there and maybe get a little interest on it. Just pay me in 30 days, give me a little interest. I don't need it in my bank account.
You'd be surprised how many small businesses don't want to be paid in 30 days. We do offer that though. We offer small payment, or we offer like 30-day or within like a week. So if you want to go to a weekly payout, and as companies grow, those options become a little bit more enticing for them, because one, it cleans up their finances rather than getting deposits every day and then having to reconcile those deposits, and makes it a little bit more seamless for them. And so as we've seen companies grow and we bring on larger organizations, we see that those organizations, unlike the small and micro merchant, they're okay with like a week or a 30-day payout timelines. But the micro merchant and the small business who's just getting started, immediacy is huge for them, especially in the US. We need things here, and like we need things as quickly as possible. Just as Americans, that's become our mindset and culture.
We've been spoiled, right?
We're very spoiled in that aspect. That's one of the big cultural differences between the US and Europe with our payment provider, like our merchant. Like payout timelines it's not that they don't want to be paid out as quickly. It's just that the expecting to be paid out like within 30 seconds kind of idea is different for them. But it works out. And we're developing things here that help the US market and will help the US market grow.
We've all been Amazon to death, right? Where we expect things so quick. And if you live in a major city like we do, you know, both of us, you know, Denver or Southern California, it's just like, it's even more, you know, more of a microscope on service and expediency.
Yeah. I mean, you and I had a good talk on, you know, Amazon and what will be the next kind of competitors for them. Will it be someone like Instacart, or will it be someone like Walmart? And I don't know. I mean, it's not about the development of like I told you, Alex, Amazon didn't develop an e-com site that was anything above and beyond anything anyone else can do, right? What they did is they developed a supply chain and a logistics network that is unrivaled. I mean, like FedEx is not as good of a logistics service, in my opinion, as Amazon built out. Amazon is truly built out an amazing supply chain and amazing logistics, and are able to get things to people so rapidly. And I think one of your guests on a podcast was saying, you know, we're not Amazon. Like they were saying, we're not Amazon. We're not going to get you 2-day delivery, right? And it's true, right? Like businesses and people need to be almost reminded that, you know, Amazon is truly unique in that it has a great supply chain, a great logistical network, and we leverage it at SumUp. You can order SumUp products on Amazon and get it 2-day shipping if you're a Prime member. Whereas if you order it through us, it's going to take maybe 3 days because it has to go through just a different warehouse than through the federal UPS, USPS system. So Amazon's always an interesting one when it comes to thinking about their support and thinking about what they've done and how they've changed the way we think in America and in the world, actually.
Yeah, absolutely crazy. I order something on Amazon, and sometimes I'll get an email like, "Oh, we're so sorry. We told you it was going to be delivered in 2 days, but it's actually going to be delivered in a week. Is that okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it's fine, whatever." And they set the bar high, and then I get disappointed, and then it shows up literally the next day. Like I'm just like, what is crazy. How like it's the craziness of and I watch it all day because I work from home now. I see the Amazon truck literally stop by our home at least 2 or 3 times, and we get packages delivered probably every hour, which is absolutely insane. And my dog goes crazy every time. She's probably like, what's going on with all these cars? But the expectation is so high now, and we're in this this world where everything is instant. Like it's like delivery is instant, payment is instant, communication is instant. Like you almost expect, like, I don't want to wait on hold. I'm just gonna go to Facebook Messenger or Twitter or WhatsApp or whatever. I'll get a response way faster that way. And you know, while I'm doing that, I'm also gonna text my friends on WhatsApp. I'm also gonna do my banking and pay my mortgage loan off. Like everyone's multitasking and doing 10 things all at once and expecting something in an immediate fashion, which is definitely new.
Yeah, it's definitely a new thing, right? And I don't know. There's so much it's not necessarily a bad thing, right? I don't know if I'd say it's a good thing, but it's not necessarily a bad thing that we don't have kind of impulse control anymore. It poses challenges for us in like the customer experience world, right? Like our goal as customer experience professionals is always to, one, meet the contract that we have in place, right? Like if you are a merchant with SumUp, our contract is that you'll use us and we'll make sure you get paid, minus the fees, but we'll make sure you get paid, right? And when we don't meet that contract, that's when we have issues. And so when we meet the contract, we're satisfying the demand, right? And you'll see it in a lot of companies that do these like 0 to 10, how likely to recommend us. And they always focus, and like 10 is very satisfied. And they always focus on satisfaction because they always are just focusing on meeting the contract that is in place. But one thing I learned in my profession, right, is that when you only satisfy a customer, you're not creating loyalty. You create loyalty by creating an emotional response to your product or your services or to your company.
Yeah.
And so when I was at that startup in San Diego, one thing that we did is we had a custom scale that measured using words that people understood, right? So on the low end was I hate it, and on the high end was I love it. And this concept was foreign for a lot of people. And the way I always explained it was like, Alex, you said you have 3 kids. I'm assuming you're married.
Yep.
Okay. Valentine's Day. Did you tell your wife, I'm very satisfied with you? Or did you tell your wife, I love you?
Typically it's I love you.
Typically it's
On a
I love
good
you,
day.
right? I hope on Valentine's Day, the one day out of the year, you say I love you, right?
Wait, Alex, you gotta try I'm satisfied with this relationship next Valentine's Day, and
Time
tell us what the
around,
response
I'll
is.
let Graham know. Thanks for that.
Yeah, let me know. We'll do this weekly. We'll have a podcast.
Yeah.
No, but so when you use the language that the consumer understands, right? That is emotional and that they understand, you get better feedback. And so what we were measuring is, instead of measuring how satisfied were you with this, we started measuring the experience, and we wanted to know what your emotional response was to it, right? And so at SumUp, we were starting to do that as well. How can we start measuring the emotional response via surveys and via scales? And some people, like an engineer, just looks at it and says, oh, I'm just going to use the 1 to 5, whatever scale.
Yeah.
I don't care. It's a 1 to 5. Doesn't care about the words. But you get people who use it and look at the points on there and say, oh, I love it, right? And then I get people who call me up and say, well, hey, I don't love it. Like, it's not a 7 for me or whatever, right? And then I say, okay, well then don't mark that down. Like, because we've been so conditioned, right? We've been so conditioned to mark a 10. Salesperson says, oh, you got to give me a 10. It's tied to my bonus, whatever, right? So, there's always this emphasis on the highest score. And I don't want you to give me the highest score if that's not how you truly feel. I want you to give me the score that is best reflective of the experience that you had, even if that means saying it was unsatisfactory or that you hated it. Right. Because if you tell me that, that means I have something I can fix. Whereas if you just tell me, oh, it's a 10 or whatever is a 7, what does the 7 mean on an NPS scale, right? Like, there's not even a label there. What does it mean, right? Is 7 really good for you? Culturally, if I was in Japan, 7 would be fantastic, right? And so really we want to measure emotional response to things. And we want to measure it. We want to measure that experience in an emotional level, not to be manipulative, but so that we can not just satisfy the contract, but try and go a little bit above and beyond, right? How can we fix things so that you move up that scale? And we see that people who have a stronger emotional response in the positive toward the love end are more likely to be loyal to us than people who mark a 10 on a net promoter score, who just say that they're very satisfied. Yeah. And so it's just because it's a mindset shift. It's going from satisfactory, just meeting the contract, to kind of going above and beyond the contract without having to give away the whole company, right? Like, so it's an interesting battle that always is occurring.
I have a quick story for Alex. I promise it'll be quick, but because we're wrapping up here. But when I was a little kid, I went on a cruise ship with my parents, and this is back when cruises actually existed. And for people who don't know the cruise experience, it's all you could eat. For adults, it's all you could drink. But as a kid, you remember the fun experiences throughout the day. But the most important thing is dinner, because you get dressed up, you put a little suit jacket on, and like you get all fancy, and you go to dinner with the family, and usually there's like 10 people at a table, and the waiter comes over. Anyways, I remember being on this cruise because every time the waiter came over and interacted with us, he would say some things like, very excellent choice, very excellent choice. Oh, that is a very excellent dessert. He said the word excellent literally 40 times within a 1 hour period. And we would go back to the cabin, and every day would be like, was it weird that he said the word excellent a bunch? And we'd be like, yeah, that's weird. Come to the end of the trip, which is 7-day cruise. he comes over and he, takes our order and everything, and we have our dinner, and then he comes over at the end and he says, "Hey everyone, I just wanted to thank you all for the wonderful week. It was very excellent to serve you guys. And you may be wondering why I said the word excellent so many times. And I did that on purpose because I want to get an excellent score on my ranking, on my scorecard, because it ties into my bonus, and maybe I'll be able to stay as a waiter." So there's definitely some gamification around there, but
Wow.
your story brought that one up into my mind. And the whole phrase of it being excellent, like I don't know if I would call it excellent. The meals, I would say I loved the meals. I don't know if excellent's the right word, or was I satisfied with service? Sure. But I love your example of using do you love it, do you not love it, tying emotion to it.
Yeah. And I think also right, I think the excellence is, and that's what's interesting, right? When you are constantly being conditioned to hear it, so that when you see it, you're like, oh, right, like my mind thinks excellent. Service could have been crap, right? But because he keeps using that, it's conditioning you and using persuasion and slight manipulation there. And that's what that's one thing I hate. I don't want that, right? I don't want to see people manipulated like that. And I think it's kind of a horrible thing when companies do that, but at the same time, right, we can learn from these experiences. And so we see that here at SumUp, right? We get negative feedback in, we try and act on that negative feedback. We try and understand the root cause of why that is happening. And moving towards using emotional language has been very helpful in doing that. And so we don't try and communicate it in a persuasive way, but we do try and say, hey, these are things that we fixed that we hope you will love, right? Like, because these were big issues that we had, and we hope you love our fixes, so that you stay with us, so you don't churn, so that we can keep helping you out and your business out. And so it's always an interesting thing. I think there's a fine line between persuasion and manipulation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wish we had more time to discuss this. We'll have to just absolutely do this again, because I like the subject of it, of just meeting those SLAs, or what the expectation is versus the emotional aspect to it. Because that's, like you said, it's going to build brand loyalty. It's going to build the word of mouth. It's going to do all those things that actually drive the business forward. Where if a waiter or someone's just looking for a 10 as satisfactory, it doesn't arm you with any data to really go out and how to fix the business and improve the business.
Yep.
So it's absolutely an important subject. And we should talk about that a little bit more in the podcast too, Artie, and bring some people back like you, Graham, and just have a roundtable on, let's talk about this, manipulation in the CSAT and NPS and all these metrics, and how do you know like they're actually accurate. But Graham, I have to say, man, we pushed the limit here. I loved it. We had a great time chatting it up with you. And honestly, we just got into a whole nother, we just opened Pandora's box at the last 5 minutes, but it was fun having you on, man. I'm glad you came.
Yeah, it was great to be here. And honestly, if you ever want to have me back on, I'm more than happy to do it again.
Absolutely. I think we're going to have to do a follow-up. And Alex, I think I love that idea. Maybe a round table with 2 or 3 people in similar roles, and we could talk about a specific topic like surveys and customer experience. But Graham, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. Alex, pleasure as always. And we'll see you on the next podcast.
Sounds good. Well, that wraps up the show for today. Thanks for joining, and don't forget to join us next week as we bring another guest in to talk about the trends around cloud contact center and customer experience. Also, you can find us at adleradvisors.com, LinkedIn, or your favorite podcast platform. We'll see you next week on another Cloud Podcast.